We're going to go ahead and take a look at sine and cosine as they're defined for the unit circle. We'll go ahead and look at the sine graph and the cosine graph, and then we'll do a review of a couple of things for this lesson. So when you are dealing with a unit circle, meaning your radius is 1, and if it specifically says unit circle, then you look at your angle, and if it goes to this point on the unit circle, then your cosine is your x and your sine is your y. Notice that x, y is alphabetical in your ordered pair, and your sine and cosine are alphabetical. C comes first, S comes second, so your cosine goes with the x, which they both come first, and your sine goes with the y, and they both come first. Highly recommend that you have this definition memorized, that your sine is your y and your cosine is your x on a unit circle. Now, here on this particular problem, you are told that you have this angle and you are given the point. However, this point is told that you're told that it's on a unit circle. So that means your sine is your y value and your cosine is your x value. That's all it is. That's it. Nothing more. But remember, it's only on a unit circle. So now we're going to go ahead and look at the sine graph. Now, sine, remember, is the y values on your unit circle. If we go back and we look at what you're supposed to have memorized, the sine of 0 is 0. The sine of 90 is 1. Sine of 45 is root 2 over 2, which is about 0.7. Sine of 30 is 1/2. Sine of 60 is root 3 over 2. And then if you kept going around your unit circle to 120, to 135, and then went to 150, then went to 180, sine of 180, which is once again over here. Then if you went to sine of 210, that would be negative 1/2. Sine of 225, that would be here at about negative 0.7, because it'd be negative root 2 over 2. Sine of 240 would be about here. Sine, we look at our y value here, it's negative 1 at 270, and we keep doing this all the way around until we get to a full revolution. When we look at this, what we have here, if I move this out of the way, is the sketch of our sine graph, and it really does continue on forever in each direction. You need to make sure you're familiar with this and are able to draw a sine graph. Remember, sine starts at the origin, curves and goes up, curves and comes back down, and then starts again at the axes. Now, when you're drawing this, these are curves above and curves below. You cannot just draw straight lines or mountains or like a saw blade. They are curves. So we're going to do the same type of thing when we're looking at our sine. Sine, once again, is looking at the y values, or not the y values, the x values. So here at 0 degrees, your x is 1. So at 0, you're 1. At 90, your x is 0. Here at 180, your x is negative 1. Here's 180, there's negative 1. At 270, your x is 0. And then all the way around to 360, your x is 1 again. And then we could come along and we could do the cosine of 30, which is root 3 over 2, the cosine of 45, which is root 2 over 2, cosine of 60, which is 1/2. And then we could do the cosine of 120, which is negative 1/2. We could do the cosine of 135, the cosine of 150. We already did the 180. Then we could come back to 210, and then 225. And we're just doing the x coordinates from our unit circle. So if you wanted to pull up your unit circle and just Find your angle, look at the x-coordinate, and that's what we're plotting here. It's just the x-coordinate from your unit circle. And well, if you do that, then we end up getting this shape right here, which is your cosine graph. Cosine starts out at the top at a height of 1, curves and goes down to a depth of -1, and then curves and comes back up to a height of 1. So how far do we have to go before we repeat? Well, it's 2 pi if you're in radians, or 360 if you're in degrees. So you'll probably want to have both of those written down. So now we're going to get into the review of what we were dealing with before. You want to find your reference angle. Well, this is more than once around. So you'd want to go ahead and subtract 360. And if you're at 360, that would be 330. Well, that's 30 degrees away from the x-axis. So your reference angle is 30. Now, if we think about where is 330, 330 is right down here. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. We'll try it this way. It's down here 30 degrees on your unit circle, but your reference angle is 30, and you know that the cosine of 30 is √3/2. You look at where you are in your unit circle to decide if it's positive or negative. We're at this location here, which is in the fourth quadrant. Cosine, once again, is x, so you're going right to get to it, so it would be positive. Now, over here on the right, we're dealing with something pi/4. Remember, your reference angle for anything pi/4 is pi/4. Cosine of pi/4 you're supposed to have memorized, which is √2/2. Now you have to decide where that is so that you'll know if it's positive or negative. So we're here. We rotate -3/4 pi, puts us here. So when you're looking at this, you're looking at cosine, which is your x. When you're at this location, your x in the third quadrant is negative because you're going to the left. So you just put a negative in front. And we've done these types of problems before, but we're just doing a quick review on it. 440, no, not 440, 405. That's more than once around, so subtract a full revolution of 360, and well, if you do that, you get exactly 45 degrees, so that also is your reference angle. The sine of 45 is √2/2. We don't necessarily have to worry about drawing it on an xy coordinate plane because we know 45 is in the first quadrant and everything's positive in the first quadrant. Next one here, we have something pi/3, so you should know that your reference angle is pi/3. Sine of pi/3 you're supposed to have memorized, which you know is √3/2. So now we want to go ahead and draw this out to figure out if it's positive or negative. So we start out here, rotate backwards 2/3 pi to here, so that we are now into the third quadrant. So you know that to get to your third quadrant, you're dealing with sine, which is your y. You're going down, so you would know it would be negative in front.